inspired by what you hear here, and you will learn something new. So, on my side here, hello.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you for coming to talk to me.
No problem.
You just speak a little bit and then tell our guests your name and what it is that you do.
So my name is GLADYS WITELE. I'm a master's speech and language therapy student. So I'm currently partaking in a 2-year master's. Previously, I was a speech and language therapy assistant. So yeah.
So before you became to do the speech and language therapy, what it is that you did before? What did you study to do first?
So at first I did my undergraduate in human communication science, and that really helped in
Bridging you into speech and language.
Yeah.
So guys connected, she's a very good communicator. So we will find out here on this show what her role is in safeguarding and protecting of children. There's a lot of misconception, as Sister Patricia said earlier, but there's a lot of misunderstanding as well as to how we can protect children. Some think feeding the children is all you can do to protect kids. So looking after kids is about giving them food, giving them shelter, to the point where some parents overfeed their kids and they think, if I stuff you with food, I'm doing a good job because you've got to eat to be healthy. But actually, sometimes overfeeding can also be bad. It could be seen as child neglect. And so let me not talk too much. I've got experts here who can explain all of that. So finally, I've got another guest whom is very, very hard to get. Just to get him tonight was, whew. So we're going to bring our next guest all the way from Holland. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Brother Dolly.
Hello, Sister Rose. Hello.
How are you today?
Well, I'm fine. Thank you. What about you?
I am fine. I'm not stressed anymore.
All right. Thank God.
So, could you please tell the audience your full name and where you are? Oh, I've said it already, but where you are and what it is that you do.
Well, my name is Dolly Esengo. I live in the Netherlands and I'm a child care worker. I work with toddlers and school-going children.
You work with toddlers?
Toddlers, yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for connecting tonight. Well, so I've got 3 people here. I'm quickly going to say hello to the people that are connected on Facebook. Thank you so much for being here. So I have Pastor Fire Fogo, I have Peuple Toujours, Francis Garcia, I have Maman Destiny, l'adoratrice Jeanne Bilonda, I have Brother Jean-Michel, Heaven Above Studios connected, Mama Marcelina Ramires. So if you are, I have a Petre connected. I need all of you to don't just share. So please don't be spectators, be partakers and share. Somebody out there is worried her kids are going to be taken away, is maybe abusing children without knowing that she's abusing the kids. So this video will shed a great light to help us as a community as a whole. Now, I'm going to get straight to my questions for you guys because I really want us to enlighten the people that are here connected, including myself, because I don't know much about social work or what it is to really protect kids legally. We do look after kids biologically because you're a mother, you give birth to your child, you're a father, you bring up your kids, but there's a lot of practicality that the world brings into it that we don't know. So what does safeguarding mean?
Well, safeguarding essentially is just the protection of children from harm or maltreatment. That's all it is.
And then in that case, what does child protection mean then?
Child protection is the process. So the procedures that you need to do in order to safeguard the children.
Oh.
The action that you do as social workers.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are the reasons that a child may be removed from their parent?
Well, I think perhaps we can go back a step, because social workers don't just come and knock on people's doors and remove children, as I think the main sort of society thinks that that's what happens. I think for a child to be removed, it takes a lot. It can take years of support for the family, years of advice. There's a procedure, that's what I'm saying. So you will have, perhaps, it depends on what the issues are, but in terms of the procedure...
Give me an example, or a few examples of the reasons why a child may be physically snatched away from their parents. Physical, sort of tangible reasons that you have been accustomed to, or you've seen.
Yeah. Well, there's various reasons in regards to harm. You've got sexual abuse. So it could be historical, it's still happening, so therefore they are still at risk of that happening in the future. It could be physical abuse, it could be exploitation.
Exploitation?
Yeah, that's a very kind of recent thing. So child exploitation is basically where you've got children who are used in order to be groomed. So there's a film called Three Girls up in Rotherham, where you've got 3 white girls who were in care. Not all of them were, I know, but they were used by a gang of older men, adults, basically exploiting them sexually.
So exploitation is usually sexually only, or is there more to exploitation?
Oh no, you can have criminal child exploitation.
So you use them for criminal activities?
That's right. So that's, when you look at criminal exploitation, you're talking about county lines, drugs. So you see a lot on the news. This child's been missing for weeks and weeks, or months even.
They disappear?
Yeah. So that means that highly likely that they have been groomed into being in gangs and exploited to go and sell drugs in different counties. So you call it county lines. So that's kind of the exploitation main part. You could also, obviously, talk about domestic violence. So there's violence within the home. It could be parents' ability to take care in terms of their own mental health, the parents' mental health. So there's loads of reasons why children can be removed from their parents,
I'm quickly going to go to Brother Dolly. What are the reasons, in your opinion, that in your community where you're at, that kids can be removed from their parents? What are the reasons?
The reasons can be if the environment is not safe for the child, and that we see that it's very dangerous. It could be one of the reasons, or that we see a child is not looking properly, like it should be. Like when they come to the child care, the daycare, they look dirty, or always with they are afraid for you for the workers, the child care workers, or they hide themselves when you are calling their name. So I think that those are one of the reasons when a child can be taken away from their child for their parents.
I think I can add as well in regards to sort of, I think he's talking about neglect.
Child neglect,
and emotional abuse as well. So I know I talked about the physical parts of it, but emotional abuse, which is quite difficult to quantify, and especially in terms of removing children from their parents. It's hard to evidence emotional abuse than physical abuse, or, you know, the other expectation, because you can see it's happening. But with the emotional abuse, it's quite hard to evidence in court.
Brother Dolly, give me an example of something that you've come across that a child was really looking like they needed to be removed from their home. When you say a child is looking dirty or a child is neglected, is it they come to school looking, their clothes are looking dirty, messy? What exactly are you talking about when you say that?
Thank you for the question. I'm talking mostly about the clothes are dirty, or the children, they are smelly. You know, they are
smelly.
not probably, they are smelling. So they didn't took a bath. So when you have the child in your hands, you are smelling some, what can I say, dirty stuff or dirty odor. So those are the things that can be one of the reasons that they can take a child away, or suspicions that there is something in the house that is not right with the children, or that there is children abuse.
Okay. Thank you very much. I know Gladys isn't talking yet, but I'm going to come to her in a minute. So we talked about the process. What kind of process is involved? What kind of process is involved for us to get there and say, okay, this child needs to be removed. This is what we need to do. Sister Patricia, what would you do? What kind of process is involved?
Well, with every case, it's risk assessed. So the risk assessment has to be in regards to the welfare check we talk about, where the likelihood. So is a child already experiencing harm, significant harm? You know, if we don't remove them from that environment, what would happen? And does that removal is imminent? Do we have to do it now? You know, so we have to look at the protective factors around that child. So it's not just like, you know, Brother Dolly's talking about, you know, the child is not looking clean. It's not just straight away when you take them away. You know, there's a process, like I said, you know, providing support to that family. So if you go with that example, so we would speak to the parents, trying to understand really what's going on at home, do an assessment, child and family assessment, to really kind of look at the holistic picture.
Okay. Let me give you guys an example. A child comes to school very hungry looking. Every day she comes to school. She lives in, by the way, we're talking about kids in Europe here. She comes to school looking hungry. When kids are having their lunch, this child scavenges into the bins in search of a food. And you see such a child, what do you do as a social worker? Brother Dolly first, and then Sister Patricia.
Thank you for the question. I think first, to talk with your colleague, that I see that this child must, when the children, they are having lunch, that they are grabbing in the bin. And maybe what our Sister Patricia have said, to talk also with the parents, what exactly is the situation, because you cannot just go straight away and tell the parents you will take the children or the child away from you. So you need to go into what we always say, that you don't judge the parents, but you are standing across the parent. So to show the parents that it's not wrong to ask for help, or it's not wrong when you see that you need help, that you need to reach out. But because we are human beings, we cannot know everything by ourselves. So we need each other always. So I think that's the important first step to do.
Okay. Sister Patricia, you want to add to that?
Well, I think he's just kind of rounded it up, really. He said exactly what I was thinking. Yeah, it's not an immediate thing, really.
We see you guys as witches coming into the home, breaking a home. This is a place with family, mother, father, kids. A single parent is used to looking after her kids, and then suddenly the child is hungry at school or does something at school, or you guys notice the uniform is dirty at school. Suddenly, the parent gets a call. Everybody's afraid to be on the radar of social services. They don't want you to control them. And then there you come. Oh, by the way, we've been assessing you for a while and we're taking your child away. So everyone's worried. They don't like you guys because they think you pick things even when there's no issues. Apparently, you tend to pick things.
Well, I don't think that's a very fair judgment about social workers.
Well, tell us different.
Okay, like I said, there was an assessment, and we would speak to parents about what the concerns are. So most of the referrals we receive are from, you know, other professionals. So it could be school, it could be police, it could be member of the public. So there's other people. So it's not like social workers knock on the door and say, oh yes, I know this. So there are referrals that we would look at and assess and make a decision as to where to take the case.
I want to bring Gladys into this. So this child has been noticed to not be well, or maybe teachers or have noticed bruises on the child, and I'm assuming they would talk to the child as well. Now this child isn't talking. Do you come in as a speech therapist at all at any one of these stages where a child is being dumbstruck because some shock is happening in them and they suddenly stop talking? Would they call you as a speech and language specialist?
I think so, definitely. We could work with a lot of kids who have sort of like that trauma towards things.
That's the word, trauma.
There is a case such as selective mutism, where the child wouldn't talk in a particular environment due to like trauma or anything psychological. So
selectively a child can choose to be mute in specific conditions and environments.
Yeah. So we describe it kind of like an anxiety. So you know when you have like an anxiety, you might be afraid, have phobias. So like you would have a phobia of spiders, that child would have a phobia of talking in that particular environment.
Wow.
So there would be a lot of speech and language therapy interventions with that child, with the child's TAs, teachers.
TAs, please guys, do not abbreviate on this show. What's a TA?
A TA is a teaching assistant.
Thank you. Now you're talking. Mama Maria Sokol, all the way in America, doesn't understand what you're saying. Okay.
So yeah, we would work closely with the child's teaching assistants, teachers, anybody who the child feels comfortable talking with, and make that sort of like a relaxed environment for the child. And then there would be some therapy tools that we'll use. We could use such things as talking mats to give them an opportunity. Yeah, to give them an opportunity to talk. So they pick a topic to talk about, and then we can slowly unravel from there.
Okay. I forgot to ask you to really elaborate what your role was. So what do you do as a speech and language therapist? Do you teach us how to speak English and French, how to speak with received pronunciation, how to speak really posh French, or what do you do?
As much as I would love to do that, we don't. So I work with those who have communication difficulties. So this could be speech difficulties, understanding of language, social communication difficulties.
What's social communication difficulties?
So understanding social cues.
What is social cues?
Like when you meet someone, for example, you may ask them what their name is, their age, but you wouldn't necessarily introduce yourself and then tell them that you like trains, for example.
Okay, let's go on the child. So this child is not speaking, but trauma has happened to them. And this child is not approachable. How would you interpret a child who is afraid to approach you? Would you see that as something that is wrong? Something could be amiss with the child?
I would definitely see the aspect of withdrawal and just sort of pick up on that. And then I think the support from the teachers as well would be important. Seeing if it's a reoccurring thing and sort of like getting a case history from that and an understanding of the child's behaviours.
Okay, thank you. Maman Cécile Mondeke says, thank you guys. I do love the program. Maman Destiny said, some parents are good but ignorant. Sister Esperance says, if you're a good parent, you would not be worried about social workers at all. Now, your role, Gladys, is a speech and language therapist. In our community, predominantly African Congolese, there's people who've got children with speech impediment, yet they don't tend to think they need the support from a speech and language therapist. Is it because they don't know your role, or is it because they think you are labeling their child and they'd rather you did not label their child mute or whatever?
I think it's a mixture of both. In terms of not knowing our role, I still feel like as a community, especially in the Black community, not a lot of people know about speech and language therapy, which is why I always advocate for, like, you know, more Black therapists and more Asian therapists, just to get it out there. And then in terms of labelling of their child, I think there is that fear that their child will be labelled as autistic or any other communication difficulties. But there's kind of strength in labelling because you're able to get all that support that your child would require, especially from school and funding. You'd be able to, you know, bridge that gap that your child has difficulties with.
The layman would call it labelling, but I would call it a diagnosis.
Yeah. That's what we would call it, yeah.
I would call it a diagnosis because you can't get the right treatment without the correct diagnosis.
Yes.
A lot of people don't get the right support because of that lack. Or you could also be misdiagnosed.
100%.
You can label your child something when they could be diagnosed as a specific condition and get the right support. Isn't it right?
And I guess as well, that's also part of going back to social work.
That's
also part of us looking at the parent and their ability to parent appropriately. So if a child has communication difficulties, you as a parent, what are you doing to support that child?
They're praying for the child.
Well, prayer is good, you know.
Well, that's what we do. I would just pray and pray and pray again until the tongue gets loosed.
Right. Well, unfortunately, there are things also in place that God has given us, the power, the ability to help ourselves. And obviously speech and language and any other support that you may have for that child that you're talking about is one of those supports. So it's about parents really being open about the support, because actually that support can mean or may mean that the child can then reach a level that they are actually improving rather than you're hindering that development.
Thank you. I'm going to bring Brother Dolly back. I have a question for you.
Yes.
Why are African parents afraid of social services and social workers, in your opinion?
Well, I think most of them, they think that we will judge them or tell them that they are bad parents.
But what if they are?
Most of the African parents, they see us as witches, that you think that you know better than I can raise my child. So I think most of the problem is the judgmental thing, that they think they will get judged about how to raise up their child. I think that is the most common problem in our African community.
Okay, so should I turn a blind eye if I'm in the church or in the family and I notice child neglect, child abuse? Should I turn a blind eye because it's my relative? Or what would you advise me to do as a social worker?
Well, I advise you not to turn back your eye.
Not to turn a blind eye.
Yes, exactly. On that moment, it's good to speak with your relative. Look, I have suspicious. Is your child okay? What is happening? Because a problem is the best to, when you see suspicious, to take action than to wait, because maybe it would be too late. So that's what I can say. Because otherwise the child maybe the child is going through difficult a trauma, like our sister Patricia said. You have seen it, but you just neglect it. So it's very dangerous. It's better to save the child on time than that you are too late.
Thank you. Sister Patricia, do you want to add to that, please?
Yeah, I mean, I guess early intervention is really powerful. You know, there's no point of leaving things, because at the end of the day, the problems are getting worse. It could even be other things adding into other problems. So most of the times where we've got families having any of the issues that I just mentioned earlier, it's not just one issue in isolation. You can have domestic violence with substance misuse and mental health. So it can get quite complicated. Yeah. But in terms of the question where you asked, how to approach parents.
How to approach parents, yeah.
I think there's no manual about being a parent. There's no parent as well in the world that doesn't want the best for their children or goes out there to harm.
You'd be surprised. I'll show you some of them.
I'm just saying.
Well, I think that's what we're on Talk to Me.
Yeah. Well, then let me just say that generally.
Thank you.
Okay, but there's exceptions in everything. I think in everything you have to be open-minded. If you are doing something, I mean, we are social workers. We come in, we don't know your family.
No.
You know, we're seeing what you may not be seeing, and that's what we call in terms of insight. Okay, we have insight into issues, and you know, we can see that, well, if we leave the child here or the parents not engaging, this is what's going to happen. And for me, it's parents need to be open-minded, not to think I know everything or I'm here to take your child away. I mean, me personally, I don't know if you know who's watching, but the way I practice in collaboration with parents. You know, I'm not here to take your children. I will tell you what the processes are. It's down to you to make those steps to ensure that your child is safe. It's not me, because at the end of the day, that is your child. You will have them forever. You won't have me in your household forever to tell you, you haven't done this, you haven't done that.
So if they don't follow the process, then they get done for. You take the kids away.
Well, ultimately, because they're not doing what they're supposed to do.
Okay, so we're going to be showing you a video shortly, guys. I want to show you that social workers do fail. I'm not here to bang on them being bad, but because all I hear is negative comments. Social workers took away my kids. I didn't do anything wrong. My kids went to school. These teachers, they pick on me. They keep reporting to the social workers and this and that and that. So there are lots of positive sides to the social workers, which I'm hoping by the end of this show you will find out. And you can use that in the future to help you and the people around you. But then there's failings as well. And you said something about a process. So an assessment. Do parents know what these assessments are, this process are, or do they feel like they're being entrapped? And then when these assessments aren't done correctly, do the kids then suffer instead of actually being helped? Mama Cecile says in our community we should open up because most of us are bidding the real problem, so we're keeping the real problem. So we should open our own sort of social services. Esperance says the guests are amazing. Failing to seek help could lead to loss of your child. Thank you. Mama Cecile says we don't understand or make research, but we just talk. By talking and raising awareness, this is more helpful as well. Patricia Merlin says they wouldn't see it like that. They always assume that the parents always assume that they're doing a great job. They don't see that they're struggling. Nova, Miss Nova, God bless you for connecting. Eliezer Pinto, thank you for connecting. So I'd like to ask Brother Jean-Michel, Heaven of Our Studios, to just please show us the video. I want to show us assessments and the steps that do happen for a child to get helped. And I want to show you that some kids, unfortunately, are missed. So the social services, social workers, speech and language, even the police are very important in safeguarding our kids. Watch this video. It's only 2 to 3 minutes. And then we'll be back and we'll talk about that and more questions.
This is the story of Victoria Klimbe. She was born on the 2nd of November 1991 in Abobo, Ivory Coast. The 5th of 7 children to parents Francis and Berthe. Mary Therese Kouaro was Victoria's father's aunt. Originally from the Ivory Coast, she moved to France where she lived with her 3 children after divorcing her husband. In 1998, Mary Therese travelled back to Ivory Coast to attend the funeral and also went to go and visit Francis. She told them she wanted to take one of their children with her back to France so she can provide an education for them. This is a common thing that happens in many African households where a child is sent to go and live with a relative in the Western world so that they can provide for their family once they grow up. And although they weren't that close to Mary Therese, their parents decided for Victoria to be selected. Mary Therese fraudulently claimed Victoria was her child. Originally, she was meant to take another girl called Anna, but Anna's parents changed their mind. So Victoria came to Britain, named as Anna, and will be known as Anna for the rest of her life. Victoria and Mary first moved to Paris, where Victoria was enrolled in school, but very soon the school started complaining about her absence. They filed a child at risk status on her, and social services got involved as Victoria kept falling asleep in school. The school had also noticed that one day she came in with a shaven head and was wearing a wig. It then transpired that Mary owed the authorities £2,000 in benefits and also was about to be kicked out of her house due to rent arrears. On the 24th of April 1999, Mary travelled with Victoria to London. Victoria was not enrolled in school, and there was many actions missed by Ealing Council, GPs and other services. Mary Therese finally got a job as a nurse, and instead of enrolling Victoria in school, she left her at a friend's house who she had met during her work. The friend, Priscilla Cameron, had said she had noticed small cuts to Victoria's fingers. Mary Therese had explained that Victoria had accidentally played with razors. On another occasion, one of Mary Therese's own relatives had noticed a scar on Victoria's cheeks, but Mary Therese lied and said that Victoria had fell in an escalator. The relative was suspicious and anonymously called child services. On the 14th of June 1999, Mary Therese met Carl Manning, who was a bus driver. She was his first ever girlfriend, and the relationship soon accelerated. Victoria and Marie soon moved in with him. By this time, when social services were trying to find Victoria, they didn't know her location. Mary then asked her friend Priscilla if she could take Victoria on a permanent basis because her boyfriend Carl didn't want Victoria in the house. Priscilla refused to have her on a permanent basis but agreed to have her there for the night. Priscilla and her daughter saw that Victoria's injuries looked worse and decided to take her to the hospital. The doctors alerted child services and the police and advised that Victoria stay in the hospital for 72 hours for child protection. Mary Therese attended the hospital and told doctors that Victoria's injuries were self-inflicted and that she had scabies. Although many of the doctors didn't believe this the case, Ruby Schwartz, the consultant pediatrician and named child protection doctor at the hospital, diagnosed scabies. She made the diagnosis without speaking to Victoria alone. A child protection officer at Brent Council was about to open an investigation into Victoria, but however, when she heard of Ruby Schwartz's diagnosis of scabies, downgraded the account. On the second occasion, Victoria was once again admitted to hospital for severe scalding. Again, social services missed the chance to help her. Meanwhile, in the house, Carl Manning forced Victoria to sleep in a bin liner inside the bathtub because she kept on weeing herself. On the 24th of February, the year 2000, Victoria was taken into a church where she was suffering from hypothermia and multiple organ failure. The pastor ordered them a minicab to take Victoria to hospital and didn't understand why they had brought her to church. The pathologist who examined Victoria's body had noticed over 128 injuries. She said it was the worst case of child abuse she had ever seen. Victoria had been burned with cigarettes, tied up for more than 24 hours, hit with bike chains and other objects. Victoria died of her injuries, and both Mary and Carl were both charged with murder and child cruelty. In his diary, Carl even referred to Victoria as Satan. He said no matter how hard he hit her, the child wouldn't cry. Victoria was known to 4 social services departments which all failed her. They were both found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison.
Merci de nous avoir suivis.
Abonnez-vous massivement.
God bless you all for connecting and staying tuned. On YouTube, I've got Brooklyn, Lufutu. All of you that are connected, do comment and do share. Thank you, those of you on Facebook and still connected. This is a very sad story. See, social services are meant to protect children, but then we see them as demons. Yet ourselves in our homes, we label kids as witches. A child who's urinating, who's still peeing in the bed at the age of 8, we think she's a witch. We think she deserves to be punished. A child that needs food for as nutrition to grow, we punish them by taking away food. And if social services find out about that, they come into our home, we think they're bad. They're taking away our kids. You think about that while I talk to Patricia, Gladys, and Dolly Esengo. What do you think about that video?
Well, it's very harrowing. I think social services, the system itself in the UK, is always reviewed. So there's always a serious case review when you've got a child that's, passed away suddenly or, in any other way. So there's always kind of lessons that come out of that. And I think out of the serious case review for Victoria, there have been quite a lot of failures.
Yeah, baby P.
There's not a lot of incidences as such, but like I said, we have serious case reviews to understand what went wrong. Like I said, there's quite a lot of things.
Why didn't you take Victoria away from those people?
I think society involves children or parents kind of know certain things. Why they didn't take the children away? I think there's quite a lot of disguised compliance. That's what we call it in social work. So she was known to 4 different local authorities. I believe the parents or the aunt or whoever she was had actively moved around to avoid being detected.
Okay, so you were trying then to get in touch.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay, thank you.
I think in Victoria Klimbier's, like other children, people need to understand that it's not just social workers that work with children.
Yes.
You've got health. There was a doctor that saw her, misdiagnosed her with scabies. She would have been going to school. She would have had, members of the family. So when we're talking about safeguarding, it's everybody's
responsibility.
business. Exactly.
Thank you.
Exactly. It's not just the social worker the social worker comes and sees whatever, but there are other professionals involved. And that's why I think in terms of Victoria's case, there was a very strong need for multi-agency working. And that's why there was a guidance called working together. So we need, as professionals, to share any safeguarding information about children. And that evolved in terms of having teams, what you called MASH, multi-agency teams, looking at when cases come in, they get information from health, school. So there's a lot of work that's been done following that. Unfortunately, obviously, it was too late for her.
I said earlier, child protection and safeguarding is about responsibility, accountability, and helping to change people's mind and culture. We're not saying forget your culture, but it's got to be a culture change as to how we look at children, how we look after them, how do we protect them. When you are in Europe, the way you protect kids is different from when you're in Africa. I'm sorry, but there's got to be a difference. It's not the same. So the rules of how a child is looked after in a multi-community area in Africa is very different when you come to Europe, when everybody's secluded from each other. You've only got an uncle, a mother and a father, no cousins, nobody else. Whereas in Africa, it's different. So obviously the dynamics are different. So this traumatic history of Victoria Klimbier, think of Victoria Klimbier now, Gladys. So she doesn't have scabies. She's actually got cigarette burns and injuries to the beatings she gets. Now she comes to school smelling of urine. You guys have noticed something wrong with her, so the social workers or the teachers, and then they've brought you into it because she's not speaking. Could trauma not cause her to really become mute and have a speech impediment that could be almost permanent?
Yeah, I would say that it could. There's a possibility that it could. She could also be retracting socially as well. So maybe not engaging in play with others, maybe sort of being to herself. And all those things need to be noticed by like teachers. And then as speech and language, we would come in and sort of like give her a way to speak.
Because I can see a child like this wouldn't want to talk to anybody.
Yeah, like I said, it could develop into selective mutism, for example. So we would have to build a bridge for her to communicate those things, because it could be quite traumatic for her to even say. So having things in place in order for her to be able to speak about these things is really important.
So some children, in your experience, they're not talking not because they can't talk, but because of some trauma that may have happened to them.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely in the case of selective mutism. Yeah.
Yeah. And in this case, what I'm picking out, and I'd like to talk to Brother Dolly as well, what I'm picking up is no matter how much I beat this child, the child won't stop, won't cry. There's that labeling of a witch. So we don't want the diagnosis of a doctor so we can treat the child, but we're very happy for ourselves to diagnose the child as being a witch because they're wetting their bed. Mama Lillian just wrote a child could be wetting their bed because of some trauma, which is very right. Wouldn't you say so?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
What is all this labeling of kindoki all the time where African kids are concerned?
Yeah. I think that there's a lot to be done in terms of society, in churches, to actually open up people's minds. You know, they do say knowledge is power. For me, I would just say, no, you're kindoki, because how could you treat a child like that? You know, no
so
matter...
you would say the parent is the ndoki?
Oh, yeah. You're the one who's a witch, or you're the one who's... Because you're, you know, you're choosing to beat your child to the point where they're, you know, they don't even cry and you continue to beat the child. So, yeah, it's really sad when you hear that.
Okay.
A child labelled like that.
Can we bring Brother Dolly quickly? I'll ask him this question. So if a Victoria Klimbie happened to be in your church and you saw this child in that status, you hear of a parent who's continuously beating the child in your church, what would you do, Brother Dolly?
I would like to speak with the leaders of the church to tell them the story. Look what I have found, or the suspicious what I have, what I see, and also talk with the parent. Even the parent maybe will see that it's not appropriate that I approach the mother or the father, but I would do it like that to show that it's bad that you beat your child like that. We know that in our African culture, we beat the child, they say to correct the child, but there is always a limit, because what happened with this girl, this is too much. It's just so awful to see that a parent can beat a child like this, or it's not appropriate, I think.
Well, that's still a bit light, isn't it, Brother Dolly? Because this child is still being beaten up. You talk to the church leader, and supposing that this child beater is the pastor too, then we just wipe it under the carpet because we don't want any scandal in the church. In the meantime, this child is still there.
Well, I think then to make a report, like here in the Netherlands, we call it safe home. Everybody can call to that number. It's a free number, and you could do your report and to tell them, look what I have seen. There's a child is beaten up. So I think then it's a matter of the social workers. Even you don't want to put the family in problem because they think you want to judge them. But I think in the safeguarding, or for a safely home for the child, is the better to make a report of it. Because if I agree what you have said, if we just talk with the pastors, it will just be under the carpet. But we want the safety of the child. And if the safety of the child, it requires that they remove the child away, it's better to remove the child away
now
than
you're
that
talking.
we hear that a child died. Sorry.
In Victoria Klimbie's case, she died because she wasn't removed away from those parents, the people who were her guardians. She died. See, people think social workers are witches, but wouldn't you rather a child be removed from the people who are causing her harm and live than stay there for the sake of keeping the family together? Sister Patricia, do all parents understand what constitutes abuse, neglect, and violence inflicted upon a child?
Well, not all parents understand that. I don't think it's just a question about parents. I think most people don't. I mean, the example that you've talked about with the pastor, I think safeguarding really, in terms of training, most pastors should have that. They should be a designated, well, should, as I said, they should be a designated safeguarding person within the church. Do
the churches you know in our community, do they have safeguarding teams?
Not in our community.
No, let's be honest.
No, that's what I'm saying.
This is talk to me.
Yeah.
So we're talking about this because people shy away from these things, but this is a reality. Do all churches, or the ones that we know, have the safeguarding teams?
No,
they don't.
Okay.
They should do. I mean, I attend a Catholic church. There is a safeguarding person, and I think, like I said before, safeguarding is everybody's business. So it's not. It doesn't just start with social services. There's neighbours. Anybody can safeguard your child. And I guess what I'm essentially trying to say is that,
what is neglect? What is abuse? Do they know? If they know the difference, maybe they'll know what to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, me personally, I would like to bring more awareness to people, especially within the African and Caribbean community, because I think that we've got our own understanding of abuses, and I think, like I was saying before, it's just maybe, oh, I've hit that child, but you don't understand the emotional impact you're having, or even the physical impact. And there's other ways of, you know, having disciplining, having consequences. It's not just by hitting. I mean, some children, you will hit them and it becomes like a habit. They will still do what you. It's almost like a negative reinforcement. You know, so like there's no effect. So most, I would say most parents don't know what constitute abuse, and I think it's high time that we have that platform, have that ability to understand. And like I said, I'm really, that's my project basically. I've got I've just basically got something in place that I'm going to be consulting parents, anyone that needs advice about child protection issues. You know, I can provide that for free.
Thank you. I can tell you guys watching that a lot of people don't know what child abuse is. There's an example Mama Cecile wrote, and I'll read it out because I can relate. I've read it and I've seen it, well, in videos and stuff. She says, I watched a child who's autistic being chained. See, in Africa, disability is seen as an embarrassment. It's a condition that can be controlled and managed. Would you want to be chained? Would you like to be chained to a wall, not being able to? So why would you then chain somebody because they're having certain manifestation, or they're fitting, or they're making a lot of noise? They are still a human being with rights. But see, these parents don't know that by chaining that child, they're committing a crime and they're abusing the child. Because for them, that's discipline, that's controlling that child. Because if they let them loose, they'll run loose in the streets and harm themselves. But chaining them is also harming them. So how would you advise such a parent?
I think if you get a diagnosis of whatever it could be for a child, a diagnosis is not just, okay, they're this and then that's it, get on.
That's it, exactly.
There's a lot of support around that. So if your child is autistic, they will explain to you how to, you know, manage that child, how to support them, the communication they have. Like Gladys is saying about having, you know, Makaton, I think, yes, Makaton, sign language. So they can actually train you as a parent to embrace that child.
They're human beings. They've got feelings.
Exactly. And as a parent, you should be open to that, you know, and in order to support your child. So you shouldn't really see it as, you know, it's bad. He's still a child.
Yeah.
He's still a child. He or she is still a child.
Sorry to interrupt
No,
you.
please do.
And there's still ways to support that child. It's not that you're getting that diagnosis of autism and like Patricia said, that's it. We're just going to leave you and your child there. There's so much support out there in order to help your child communicate, engage with other children. So in a way, it's helping the child, but helping the parents as well.
Thank you, Damaris Mbui, for connecting. Thank you, Patricia and Merlin. Guys, please do share. Don't just watch, kindly share. We are also on YouTube. Rose Bijoux Ramires. Before we get to an end, please do share. Jacqueline De Yogos, all the way from Bristol. Nova Miss Nova, thank you for connecting. Papa Emani Diozeye in Belgium, merci d'être connecté et de partager. Thank you for sharing. Patricia, no, Gladys, don't confuse me now. Gladys,
Yeah.
give me types of speech impediment or speech disabilities that children can have.
So a child can have, so there's developmental difficulties that a child can have that could sort of like be with speech difficulties. So for an autistic child, for example, they could have a lot of social communication difficulties, like I said, so the inabilities to engage socially with others. Understanding of language could be limited, so taking everything literal, for example, and then actual speech difficulties, so not being able to speak, non-verbal. But there could also be disfluency amongst children, so that's stutters and stammers.
Yeah, so I was about to ask, so does every child with speech impediment, is every child with speech impediment having a disability of some sort? Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, no. So stuff like disfluency, it's a lot of it is psychological based. So you can have a stammer, and they do say bilingual children are more likely to have a stammer just from learning the two languages. But yeah, a stammer can eventually go if speech and language
is involved.
Yeah.
So the kids who could stop stammering,
Yeah.
if only parents would take them to speech and language.
Definitely, 100%.
Rather than calling them witches.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. As long as the intervention is given and used with that child, then for sure.
Give me an example of child neglect, please.
Well, where do I start? I
mentioned one earlier, overfeeding.
Yeah, I know you said overfeeding. I guess not setting boundaries, that's a neglect, because if you don't have any appropriate boundaries in place in the household, okay, you've got a mum that is going through some kind of mental breakdown or something like that, and they're not able to then parent that child appropriately and setting boundaries, appropriate boundaries within the home. The child then
child starts smoking, starts drinking alcohol because the parent is drinking it, parent is smoking it. Is that child neglect?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. It could also be in terms of, you know, the child is cooking at the age of 5. You know,
well, then we teach our kids to cook early. Is that child neglect? I wasn't taught to.
Not at 5. I think what it is it has to be appropriate. The task has to be appropriate. Well,
that was in Africa, so that was allowed.
I think there's different risks there.
Let's carry on. Yeah.
Obviously, you know, the child's task has to be age appropriate. So you wouldn't expect a 5-year-old to go and cook. You know, obviously there's a lot of risk involved in that. A child that's being a young carer. caring for themselves. That's neglect. So there's plenty of examples, but I've given kind of a few within the one scenario.
And they would be like leaving your child with their younger siblings to look
Young
after
carer.
for long
But in African
periods of
families,
time.
the eldest child always looks after the siblings. The eldest child could be 8, and then the mom leaves them with 3 other kids. Is that child? Please, guys, say, is that child neglect? Can we please speak up? People are watching. We need to know what they are. We don't know.
Definitely, that
So
is.
an 8-year-old looking after 3 other siblings is child neglect.
Definitely, 100%.
Are we watching
How do you
this?
expect an 8-year-old that can barely look after themselves, look after their 3 younger siblings?
So in that case, there's a lot of African parents who are committing a lot of child neglect. All of their kids will be taken away from them then.
Yeah. So be careful.
See, this is the thing. This is a very serious matter, Sister Patricia. See, parents are saying social workers are evil. You're taking kids away from them. But the reality is the parents are committing all these wrongs that they don't know are wrongs. They think it's normal. But when the social workers come in there, they notice it is wrong and they think the kids are in an unsafe environment and they take the kids away. So that's why we need to talk about this so they know what is unsafe. So they stop doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. Like I was saying before, I think there needs to be a lot more information out there for families, like you're saying, that doing things and not realizing. And I think I want to be able to give that knowledge. I'm not here to snitch and say, or, make a referral. It's about giving that advice and ensuring that that's followed through. Because then I can say, you were given advice and support around that and you chose not to listen to it. So if your social worker's knocking on the door and this is the 5th time you've left your 8-year-old with their 3 siblings, then what do you expect?
I got 2 comments I've got to read, and I want Dolly Esengo. I hope you're listening. Sister L'Adoratrice wrote, pastors never label their own children as witches, only children in the church. Next comment, Mama Lilian says, they feed the child with unhealthy food because they are doing this likelemba. Can you tell me in English? Somebody write it down. Likelemba. I'm an interpreter, I should know this. Ristourne, which is when people put money together.
It's like contribution.
And then, money
people call it
contributions.
different,
And then, yeah.
Susu, Padna.
Yeah.
Different names.
The first comment, is that right, Brother Dolly Esengo, that kids who have different, attributes, like they're autistic or they're disabled or they're very troublesome, they've got attention deficit disorders, they are labeled as witches by some of the church leaders, but they never label their own kids as that?
I can agree with that because most of the time we hear in our community about that. So I can agree to that first comment. And I think it's wrong. It's absolutely wrong.
What is wrong for the pastors to label only the church members' children as witches and not their own?
Yeah, to label other children because you are saying, for example, that somebody's child is a witch. Maybe your own child is a witch, but you hide that for other people. So
or maybe you are blind to it.
Well, we are praying, right? God shows us things. How can you then be blind? Because the Holy Spirit is in you. It will show you that there is something wrong with your child. But it doesn't allow you to label other children who are innocent. Maybe they are like our sister Patricia said, and our other sister Gladys. They are born with psychology something, or they are autistic. The thing in our African community is we don't want to ask if we don't know information about stuff. We only want to talk. As wise things, your child, I think there is a problem with your child, but ask for information first before you judge others. I think that's very important to ask information. Yeah.
As kids get older, can managers they can manage the issue of stammering. Was that a question? I don't know. Before we end this, Sister Patricia, do you want to add to what Brother Dolly said? And I've got 2 more questions and we'll finish this.
Well, just to add that it's there's a lot of denial as well, you know,
Thank you.
when a child has been, you know, has a diagnosis, I don't want to say labelled, but has a diagnosis, most parents don't want to hear that.
Thank you.
They're just-
Especially with speech and language as well.
Yeah.
They don't want to hear my kid has got a speech impediment.
Yeah, like, you know, no, that's
Denial.
not my child. No, he's fine. You know, they're just making this thing up. How did they come up with this? You know, not my child. And again, like I said, it's about being open-minded. You can see, you know, there is something wrong. Denial is hard to undo, but with the support, that child can make progress.
Okay. Question. How do we reassure parents that social workers are not witches? They're not there to destroy your family. How do we reassure them that you are doing something wrong? That's why we're taking this kid, so that we protect the child from you. How do we reassure them that speech and language can help your child to speak better and not to harm them? How do we
reassure them? I think it's not just a bigger picture in terms of how, I mean, it's not just a community issue, in terms of how social workers are seen. I think it's a society, you know, it's not just within the African culture or Caribbean, it's just everywhere in the UK, really seen as a negative profession. I think...
How do you reassure parents that you're not the bad guy?
I said before, I work in collaboration with families, okay? So, because I truly believe that's the only way you can get people to see things, what you're seeing.
Collaborate with the parent.
Yeah, exactly. Say, I'm here. So if I'm doing an assessment, for example, I'll explain to you what that assessment, why am I doing this? Okay, what were the concerns, okay? And then the reason why I'm doing the assessment, okay? And give you basically the different options of what the outcome of the assessment would mean, you know.
For example, you come into a home where a child is beaten every day by the parents. They think that's discipline. That's how they were brought up in Africa, with a whip. But it's a crime in Europe. It's a crime in the UK. How would you point that thing out as a crime for them to actually believe it is a crime and not do it again?
I think, again, it's talking about
So just
it.
talking.
So talking to them and saying that that's not appropriate. There are other ways of disciplining children. There are other things that you can put in place. And maybe also going through different things that they do that they think is appropriate towards their children. Sometimes even signpost them to like parenting program to get more knowledge and understanding of different appropriate ways of parenting.
Okay.
And like I said, I think it's just kind of making them aware of what they're doing. So talking through that. And the assessment process is not one day. Assessment takes 45 days. So you are seeing the family over and over.
Before you can decide to take a child away.
And yeah, and it might not just be the assessment. So like I was saying, there's a process to get to before removal.
We don't want to get to a Victoria Climbier. We don't want the child to die. So would you take a child away just for the assessment to happen? And then if you found the environment to be safe, you place the child back?
That's right. That's called a Section 47 inquiry. So basically what that means is if the concerns are so significant, you then have to take that child away and do that assessment or investigation, and which lasts 15 days. So you, again, work with other professionals, so in a multidisciplinary way, in order to come to a conclusion as to what should happen to that child next.
Okay. So if you tell the parent what to fix and they fix it, you would bring the child back?
Yeah, there would be a written agreement. There would be, obviously, a discussion with that child to see how they feel.
If they want to come back.
If they want to come back, yeah. And there would also be, like I said, discussion as to how you can kind of amend that situation, how to not let that happen again.
Okay.
They would also be talked about, I guess, maybe if the situation wasn't too risky and the child goes back, but then you still want to monitor, you put them on what we call a child in need plan.
But then there is that thing that kids will leave the home because the social services remove them. They go on to become delinquents. They end up in foster care, which foster care then doesn't really protect them properly. Then they get into drugs and gangs. Is that theory valid?
Well, obviously, I think to kind of negate the feeling or perception of social workers as taking children away because of the, you know, us being witches. But actually, no, we work hard to keep children in the family home. If it's not suitable for children to remain at home with parents, we look for family members. So before going to foster care, there are searches. Okay. So we search, you know, is there a family member? Okay. And even before going to that family member, we have to also check, is that family member safe? Because there's no point of moving a child from an safe environment and then putting them into another one. So it is a process, again.
Thank you. L'adoratrice Jeanne Bilonda said that true Christians can't be scared of witches because we've got the power over them. Jennifer Jan says, I don't think enough information is given to the Afro-Caribbean community about the support offered by social workers. That is true. It's still a very negative stigma surrounding that. Children not eating a balanced diet is also a form of neglect. Yeah. Thank you so much. Now, finally, I have one question I'm going to address to all three of you. How do we bring safeguarding in the church? Do we force ourselves through to pastors and demand safeguarding in our churches? Because apart from work, and school, children go to church as well. Companies have got that. A church is like a company. Why isn't there safeguarding? Why aren't people trained? So how do we encourage that in the churches?
Do you want me to start?
Yeah, go for it.
Well, I think for me, it's about approaching the churches and making it very clear that
they've got
needs
to be accountable.
Yes, making it clear that needs to happen. I think where you get that a church is very reluctant, or you know they're not really agreeing with it, that's when it raises concerns. For me, it would be.
It will raise alarm bells. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I think that I would like to do that. You know, in terms of the project that I have in mind, is to go out there into the community to share my knowledge, the information that I know.
With the churches?
To go to church.
How can people get in touch with you?
Well, I've got a website, so you can reach me at www.familypuzzled.co.uk. And in there, there's...
I'll share the link later.
Yeah, that's fine. You can, book consultation. Like I said, if you've got questions, I do assessments. So if you're a foster carer or you want to be a foster carer, you want to know the process of that. So I do that, fostering assessments. Even if you have a social worker and you don't quite understand what's happening, I can give you that knowledge for free. So it's about, like I say, what I'm saying is it's about partaking what I know. There's no point of keeping it to myself. I want people to know this is what's happening, this is how we see things, and that's the only way you can make change.
How would you reinforce churches to have safeguarding in the churches, Sister Gladys?
I would say similar, sort of like reaching out to organisations
that can
support.
Do you reach out though? You're a Congolese girl with all this knowledge.
You know what? I
didn't even know you were Congolese. So how are the churches going to know we do exist and we can support?
You know what? I would say that having more Black people, Congolese people in these professions is a way in as well, because you would be a part of the church and a part of that community and then have that urge to sort of like make a change and help.
Thank you.
So if there were more Black people, more Africans, Congolese especially, going into speech and language, going into social work, they can then open up all that information to the community
you.
and to the churches. Yeah.
Thank you. How can people get in touch with you?
You can email me. My email is gwitele, WITELE @hotmail.com.
Okay, we'll share that information later as well. Brother Dolly Esengo, how would you encourage the church you're in Holland to start a safeguarding team? I mean, around you, how would you do it? Because we need to have this done. It's not happening. Families are breaking up, yet professionals are in the churches who are not being used for the skills they have. How would you introduce that?
Well, thank you for the question. I think what my sisters have said, just to reach out the information, the knowledge, to share it with the church. And I think especially by organizing meetings for the leaders, that if somebody is coming new in your congregation, don't be too enthusiastic to put that person to do something in the church without knowing how somebody is out of the church. Because most of the time you like the sister, the brother so much, you put them immediately in singing or leading service. But do you know their lifestyle
Sunday school
out of the church? It's the same as Sunday school. Maybe that person raped some children back in Africa. You don't know. Because I was in a
There's no
African
DBS.
church, and there before you could be as a Sunday teacher, you needed to go through the safeguarding. And first of all, I didn't understand it. I was arguing with the pastor, why this process? But he explained me, and then I agreed with the pastor that it's very important to put that safeguarding in the church. Because in the church, most of the time, we have another way of behaving ourselves than out of the church. So I think it's very important for the leaders, the pastors, to have this kind of meetings, that they get information what safeguarding is exactly.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you so much. Sister Dorcas Tabita, thank you so much. How can people get in touch with you, Brother Dolly Esengo?
People, they can reach out to Minister Esengo at hotmail.com.
Thank you. So any last words before I conclude the show, Sister Patricia?
Well, I hope that this show has been quite informative for people, and just really want to kind of say to people to reach out, get the information that's needed. You know, you've got a panel of people that've got.
Tell me about DBS in your closing statement. You said DBS. So when we're talking about safeguarding of children in the churches, in the community where people gather, so DBS, do pastors understand what DBS is? Do our families understand what DBS is? What is DBS?
So basically, DBS stands for Disclosure Barring Service. So anybody working with children should have a DBS.
It's a criminal record disclosure.
Yes. So it's a check that's done for people in roles that work with children. So from what I can understand is, obviously in churches they don't have DBS on leaders or members that kind of leading Sunday school. DBS. Because as Brother Dolly has said, you know, you're putting somebody in charge of
kids
running Sunday school, but you don't know the person's background.
Or they raped somebody, they molested children in Manchester, then moved to London.
Thank you. Exactly. So it's really important, and I think churches need to do the safeguarding very, very thoroughly, and it's about time, really.
So you're not witches trying to take kids away from their families. You don't break up families. You protect the child.
Exactly. We protect the child. And actually, if churches are not having DBSs or safeguarding things in place, I wonder what's going on there.
They've got things to hide.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So this is Talk to Me. It was long session. God bless you, Brother Jean-Michel, Heaven Above Studios. We've been here since 7 p.m. And it took long for us to do this show, but it was so important for us to do this and connect with Brother Dolly in Holland. So thank you all for being patient. Thank you so much, Brother Jean-Michel, for your time. I cannot repay you for this, really. For those of you who are connected, this platform costs money This time costs money. To bring you this information costs money. To bring Sister Gladys and Sister Patricia all the way from where they came from Luton, costs money. So, if you are kind enough to support this platform, do follow the links. I hope Brother Jean-Michel can just put the links to the bank details. You can drop in every little help, £5, £10, £20, whatever God lays on your heart so that this platform can continue. Next, we're going to bring foster parents. A lot of these kids who are being taken away from dangerous homes are being placed in foster care. If they're getting into gangs, it's also because the culture is breaking. They are taken into a different culture that is not matching what they used to. They took them away from dangerous parents, but not from their culture. They still want to be part of the culture that is a good upbringing. But then they put them in a place where it's not matching what they used to. But if more of us were foster parents, there will be continuity of care for these children. Yes, they're not with their parents, but they are still with a person they can relate to. God bless you, Mama, Pauline Bukasa and Papa, Archbishop Bukasa in Coventry, who are foster parents. You know, they take in Congolese children. So if at least more of us Africans were also foster parents, these kids wouldn't be so destabilized or disorientated when placed in different homes. So we're going to bring foster parents here so that those of you who are interested can become foster parents. So all of this costs money. So if you feel the need to support this space, please, the accounts are circulating on your screen. Drop in your £5, your £10, your £20 will be very useful. And so to close, I want to say you found out that the social workers are not witches. They are there to help us. So they remove children from harm. As many of you have commented earlier on, Sister Nelly, you're a coach. Those of you who preach on Facebook or preach in your churches, you've commented earlier. If you are a good parent, you are not going to be afraid of social services. You are not going to hide anything. Social workers don't pick things. They notice things and they go after the things that could cause harm to the child to remove that harm so the child is protected. Their role is not to break up families, but it is to protect children. So if in the house you are abusing a child, you are beating a child, you are neglecting a child, you are malnourishing a child, you are going to kill this child. Sooner or later, they're going to be a Victoria Climbier. They don't want that. So they remove the child from harm and protect them. So help is available. Talk to social workers if you're unable to look after your kids. Get the help. They can give you the help so that they don't take your child away. Your child has problems speaking. They're not a witch. Get a speech and language therapist to put in help so that your child can grow up to speak fluently. Your child is wetting the bed. It could be trauma. They could be stressed about exams, stressed about bullying. Anything could be happening. It's not witchcraft. Not everything is witchcraft, people. Help is here. Now we've got our own Congolese women and men studying, learning these things. Let's use them. Church leaders, you have a social worker in your church. You have a nurse in your church. You have a doctor in your church. You have a teacher in your church. Use them. Use them. Let's stop running after people who've got so much money to give to the church. They're people who donate the most, but yet maybe they could be the ones abusing the kids. But use the talents that are in the church. Somebody may not be a singer, but they could be a safeguarding leader in your church because they're a social worker. Find out what jobs people in your church do, not for the sake of money for the church, but for the sake of protecting the church and the families in the church. I think I've said enough now. You're watching Talk to Me. Real people, real issues, real life experiences. So we will connect. We are twice in a month. If you want to support the space, support us with your money. I'm on YouTube as Rose Bijoux Ramires. Another way to support me is to go right now and click a like and a subscribe on my YouTube channel. click a like and a follow on the page Christianity Daily Empowerment. And God will bless you. Thank you so much for the studio. Colorful studio. Thank you, my sisters. Thank you, Brother Dolly, all the way from Holland. Mag die Here vir jou baie seën. Here seën. Danke. And thank you, my sisters Gladys and Patricia.
Really
and
enjoyed
Sister Patricia Merlin. Thank you for referring them to me. And refer social workers to me. Refer teachers to me. Refer people to me. Until next time, bye.
Bye, guys.
Seigneur, tu t'approches de ceux qui s'approchent de toi. Je viens auprès de toi, je viens devant ton trône pour te donner mon cœur. Fais de moi ce que tu voudras. Je viens auprès de toi, je viens devant ton trône pour te donner mon cœur. Fais de moi ce que tu voudras. Car tu es Dieu. J'ai entendu dire, tu changes les situations. J'ai entendu dire, tu brises toutes les chaînes. Me voici devant toi. Mon cœur t'adore, mon cœur t'adore, mon cœur t'élève, mon cœur t'élève, mon cœur t'adore, Jésus. Je viens près de toi. Fais de moi ce que tu voudras. Mon cœur t'adore, oui mon cœur te loue, mon cœur t'élève, mon cœur t'adore. Comme Anna je viens près de toi. Fais de moi ce que tu voudras. J'ai entendu dire, tu guéris les aveugles. J'ai entendu dire, tu bénis les orphelins. J'ai entendu dire, tu brises les montagnes. Me voici devant toi. Mon cœur, oui mon cœur t'adore, mon cœur t'élève, mon cœur t'adore. Comme Bartimée je viens, je me prosterne devant toi. Mon cœur t'adore, oui mon cœur te loue, mon cœur t'élève, mon cœur t'adore. Je viens devant toi, fais de moi ce que tu voudras. J'ai entendu dire, tu délivres les captives. J'ai entendu dire, tu opères par le feu.